Welcome to a new episode of Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid Ahmed. We have Michael Gil. See, I screwed it up already. We have Michael Gililland from NotAverage podcast.
Yeah, you got it.
I connected with Michael a while back, spoke with him, and he told me, hey, we have a podcast going on as well. And I was like, let me go take a listen. And I've learned a lot of good things listening to the podcast, help with motivation, help with understanding how other entrepreneurs are making it happen and climbing the proverbial life ladder, because corporate ladder is not something you climb in the entrepreneur world. You are essentially climbing on your own back. So so here is Michael. Michael, tell us a little bit about how you got into starting the podcast, and if this is not your hobby, what else would you be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Junaid, man, and good to hear from you again, man. I know it's been a while.
Yeah.
But usually, so I'll kind of start. I grew up in a pretty blue collar family. My dad was in the Air Force for about 20 years.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, obviously I was moving around quite a bit. So I got used to meeting new people and having to adjust to new cultures and everything. And probably one of the lessons that are really kind of being benefits for me currently right now with what I do. But as I kind of progressed through life, my dad retired in '92. Obviously, we had to figure out, okay, well, what are the next steps?
Yeah.
So we ended up in a small place, not really a small place, but Hampton Roads, Virginia. And that's actually where I consider myself. I grew up in. So if you ask me what I am, I'm actually a Virginian, even though I currently live in Kentucky. I went to school at a small school in the southwestern part of the state called Radford University. And my professional career was about over a decade, I think, up where you are in Northern Virginia. So I did about 5 years in grocery, 5 years in retail. And, I think like most people, as they go through their professional career, they, you either like love the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Or you try and do something a little bit different. So you're always like seeking something new, seeking new challenges.
And,
that definitely fit my description. I constantly, over the 12 plus years I've been in the professional realm, I always try and seek out, well, what are the new challenges? What are the new opportunities? Who can I learn from?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, what we kind of say, fit into the box, fit into the average, right? And that kind of goes into our talk about the starting of the podcast. Actually, me and my co-host, whose name is Kaylor Slagle, we met in the MBA program about 7 years ago.
Nice.
And we kind of kept in touch. We always talked. We always had phone conversations. Whenever he was in Northern Virginia, we'd grab a beer or grab some coffee and have these like amazing conversations. Where like 75% of it was just stupid stuff, and then there was other 25% of just magic within these conversations. And
I know.
They surrounded personal development, fitness, professional. We would sit in a Starbucks and just kind of scrutinize in terms of process flow, have discussions about that. It was super cool. And that was kind of the seedlings that got it started. And it wasn't until about maybe 2 years ago we thought about this idea, well, what if people could get some value out of this conversation? And that was the start of it. And then, life happens. I picked up and moved my family to Kentucky for a professional opportunity. And, I was a little bit closer to Kaylor, so we had the proximity thing working out for us.
Nice.
And we said, kind of screw it. Let's start the podcast.
Let's do it.
That was about January this year. We just completely went full throttle, got the RSS feed, got the website up, did the test audio. We started having some conversations, laying out that audio. And, before we actually did the official hard launch of it, we had somebody reach out to us who wanted to be interviewed on our podcast. Still no idea how she found us, but she did. And we said yes. And we interviewed her and she blew us away. And she gave us about 10 other people who blew us away just as much. And
that's amazing.
We were kind of off to the races at that point.
That's so amazing.
But we kind of tag it just real conversations with not average people. more of our kind of format is really just sitting down and having a real conversation with real people, because as much as, we like to have people listen to our insights, we're actually still learning ourselves too. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
as we get these great people on, let's have a conversation, because I'm interested in what you do.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's kind of the birth of the Not Average Audio Experience podcast that we have.
Nice. I still have yet to speak with Kohler or Kaler.
Yeah, it's Kaler. It's Taylor with a K. So,
Okay.
yeah.
It's the spelling that throws people off, right?
Hey, we always say that we have probably my last name is the hardest to pronounce and his first name is the hardest to pronounce, probably in the industry of podcasting. So
it'd be hilarious if you had Kaler Gililland, right? Like, dude, really?
I don't know. That means I guess we have to get married. And me and Taylor, man, but I don't know how that would go.
The question is, who would take the last name?
You got it, yeah. Well, his last name is Slagle, so it's a little bit easier to pronounce.
A little bit easier. Okay.
So whatever's easier for the kids, right?
Yeah. That's so cool. The one thing that you mentioned about how you met him in the MBA program, that shows, okay, there's something going to happen, because through life you meet several people, but you meet them in different circumstances, right? Yeah. You'll meet people at school, right? So you met him through the MBA program, but you like when you start a new professional career, you meet so many new people.
Sure.
But then it all comes down to, okay, who's going to jive with you? Like, who are you going to stay connected with the longest? And I've had those experiences where I've connected with somebody because I joined a program, and I've been, you keep in touch with those same people. And sometimes there's, something there, but other times you're just keeping in touch just to keep in touch and to follow industry. And it's really cool that, you were able to connect with him after the fact, after going to that professional journey. Like, hey, we talk so much about this, why don't we just do it? So I've traveled a lot. I mean, I grew up I was born in Pakistan. Grew up in Saudi Arabia, made some friends there. I went, like, my entire school life was there. But then when I moved to the United States, sure, I had a few friends through college, through community college, but I had a lot more family. And I built those bonds with my family and my cousins. So there's two cousins, or one cousin that I'm always, talking to. Sure. We even thought about starting a podcast. Actually, we started a podcast about 6 years ago. It was called Still Brewing It. Still brewing. There's a coffee cup. I'm still thinking up ideas, because that's all we're doing. We're just talking about ideas, talk about what's happening in the industry. And it's just amazing. It's just funny that, and the other thing you mentioned, right? So he was up in Northern Virginia, but finally, he moved down. So who moved down? I mean, you moved down to Kentucky.
So I did. I moved from Northern Virginia to Kentucky about 2 years ago.
Okay. And he already lived down here, right?
He did, yeah, for about a year. He was, previous to that, he was just pharmaceutical sales and aeronautics. Okay. He lived in Virginia, but you can consider him, he moved everywhere. I mean, he was going out and sales calls globally and doing all that stuff.
Okay.
And decided to settle down a little bit into Kentucky.
Yeah. So since he settled down in Kentucky, it's easier for you two to, work together on that project.
Sure.
And I'm trying to get to that point as well. And I've connected with a lot of people here in Northern Virginia through the LinkedIn local platform. And the first time that I attended, I was like, dude, this is so cool. And then, I started making connections with people who were hosting it. And, I got to speak as well at one of the events. He just called me up. It's like, hey, video, you want to talk about this? I'm like, sure. I've been trying to get into video for so long. But what happened with my cousins is we started a podcast, but I was in Denver. They were in California. There's a 2-hour difference. I would have to be at the computer past midnight for them to have, any time available. And
oh yeah,
funny part is all three of us are married. all three of us have kids, right? So it's like, all right, where do you find the time? You got to make this time. And so earlier this year, I was like, I'm just going to do this. And then I found Anchor FM, the platform, to be super easy. I could just do the recordings on my commute and I can post them later that day.
Yeah.
And the technology has come so far. I can do full-on multi-track editing on my iPhone or my iPad. So I don't have to be sitting at a computer like I am right now.
No excuses, though. You have no excuses.
Exactly, right. I got no excuses. The only excuse is, okay, I got to put the kids to sleep. I got to find some time for myself to actually do the edits. Like, I have a few episodes in the pipeline that I need to edit and publish.
Sure, yeah.
But it's how things go, and that's life. And I was talking to Errol the other day, and he's like, one thing that we don't talk about, or that I haven't heard talked about, is being an entrepreneur while having a family, while having the kids. How do you do it, right? So do you have any take on that specific?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of things about it, but definitely, I think as an entrepreneur, sacrifice is a big word. So as we talk about finding, me and Kayla are kind of getting together, you and your cousin getting together type of thing, but it's a sacrifice for your family too. It's a sacrifice for your wife, and it's a sacrifice for your children.
It is.
And I get that, and it's kind of one of those things. Can you find the right person that kind of believes in your dreams a little bit, and they have to stick beside you through the thick and thin. And as you kind of figure out who that person is, just keep the communication lines open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because your wife may deal with some frustrations, like my wife may deal with some frustrations, but you talk it through and you kind of figure out what are the next steps, because there's a connection and you got to collaborate together. It's the same things, because I don't believe there's a big difference between your professional and personal life.
It's not.
There just isn't. I mean, whatever affects you personally is going to affect you professionally. And
absolutely.
versa. So, I mean, why should we ever put up these walls, and not be truthful with the people that we actually love and the people we want to connect with as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. So for me, it's finding the right people. I think you said it earlier, between me and Kayla. I mean, professionally, before I even met Kayla, I had about 5 years professional experience, and we talk about this all the time. It could have been super easy for us, and we saw a lot of people just reverting back to the average, to really just kind of say, well, screw it.
Yeah.
Well, it's because that's kind of what's expected over there, is just to be average. I could have just fallen into that trap. And that's why I'm so happy in terms of, I have a caring wife who really wants to see me succeed. And then Kayla and I met at the right time.
Yeah.
Because we both had about 5 years experience professionally. We were like, it's just not us, and it's just kind of those stars align a little bit, right? It wasn't planned, and you kind of be open to those new experiences and say,
right,
gosh, that guy I want to hang out with. My wife seems like somebody who would care about my dreams just as much as I would sacrifice for her as well too.
Yeah.
So it's big. I mean, you got to find your crew. I mean,
that's right.
In terms of the 5 people you're surrounded by with, I think the content you surround yourself with is important too.
It's very important. Yeah.
I mean, if you're kind of listening to the wrong people or listening to the wrong podcast that just tells you to chill and do stuff, and now you got to get out there and just move.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And that's some of the things that, following Gary Vee and following Tony Robbins, it's the same thing, right? When Tony Robbins and Gary Vee, they came to Virginia, and I got to go, attend this event.
That's awesome.
And I was so hyped. I was like, holy smokes, this is so powerful. And Tony Robbins is out there talking for hours and hours and hours. I was like, oh my God, how is he able to do that? And then how are we able to just sit here? It's like a concert, because you're getting up and clapping and you're screaming. It's just amazing, right? And then, so that's the week I started. I was like, I'm going to do a podcast every single day. And I was able to sustain that for like 2 weeks.
Sure.
And then I had to travel, and then I was still recording, because I'm not publishing, but I'm still recording, and I'm still getting those listens.
Sure.
And it kind of gives you a positive feedback. Like, all right, people are listening. I don't know who these people are. They haven't, reached out to me or talked to me about
Sure, yeah.
what they like, but at least there's people listening to my content. So I should just keep doing it just for the sake of my sanity as well. Because for the past week, I haven't been able to like sit down and do the edits, and I'm feeling this inner anxiousness. I'm like, all right, when do I do this? So I've been trying to pull some all-nighters. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna sit here. Everybody's sleeping. I should be able to get this done. And then of course, I get a text like, oh, the baby's awake. Can you get her to me?
Sure, yeah. Hey, that's real
And
life, man. I tell you.
it's real life. And then I'm like, this has to be documented because it's real. People all over the world are going through this, and the struggle. That's the struggle essentially.
Sure, yeah. I mean, let's not try and put a happy face on anything, right? We live our life in filters now, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook.
Exactly.
But I think that's doing a big disservice. It may look cool in the moment, and you may get a
It
lot of
is.
followers.
It is.
But
Yeah.
when these coming up generation, or even like people in their 40s, 45s who are trying to do something different, and
Yeah.
and they realize they hit that first or second roadblock.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do now? you know,
Exactly.
and they don't have the connection, they don't have the the consistency or the kind of resiliency to kind of push through that stuff, and that's
Yeah.
real. I mean, I'd rather see that sort of content because I respond more to that. Because
It is. It's because that's authentic stuff, right?
yeah, oh, yeah,
And that's what that's one of the things that resonated with me when Gary Vee said, document the process,
yeah,
because there's 7 billion people in this world, and there has to be other people that are going through the same process, the same problems, and you know where are you looking for guidance, and so where would they look for guidance? And it's like, I just have to document. I mean, I don't know if I did a good job in documenting
sure, yeah,
what I learned, but I'm just reiterating what I learned, and about the different stages a bee goes through and all these different things, and
sure, yeah.
fascinating for people, and there's so many parallels to it as well, like with life.
Yeah, and what's so much? I mean, you bring up a great point, because I sit here and talk about, because we live in this content world, right? You don't exist unless there's content, and then you don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable releasing content that makes you a little bit vulnerable.
Yes.
What if you just started a mastermind where there was no intent to make content, right? But you have 3 or 4 people that are supporting you through your journey,
Exactly.
to get to that point, and you talk about that. I mean,
Yeah.
content is good, but I think sometimes we live in a world where content. Well, if you don't believe it, or you don't really feel vulnerable, or you're not doing something authentic or genuine with the
Yeah.
content, then don't waste your time. like for me, because I don't want to watch that, because I know you're lying.
Right.
I'd rather like speak to you personally, speak to you authentically, and figure out
Exactly.
what are you going through. So I mean, get the 3 or 4 people that you like truly enjoy, get on a phone call for 45 minutes once a week, talk about your struggles, talk about
Exactly.
the good stuff that happened. I mean, and then kind of go from there, and then you
Yeah.
build up that confidence to put out that content as well too. It's baby steps.
No, that's so true. And the internet is full of people talking about these smallest niches possible, right? The one thing I always come back to is Ants Canada is a YouTube channel with 650,000 subscribers.
Explain that. What is that? I don't even know.
Ants Canada is essentially a YouTube channel that talks about ant farming.
Oh my gosh.
Ants, like ants, taking food away that we try to get rid of from our house.
Janae, what popped in my mind was it was just a camera on an anthill, and people would live stream it. That's what I think it is. Like somebody would sit there for hours watching.
Exactly what it is. They've got these terrariums in their homes, these large terrariums, and inside it is anthills and ant colonies living in there.
Yeah.
And he's got video, and he's talking about this. I'm like, 650,000 people are watching this video on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. And like, wow, this world is so diverse. This internet is so diverse that if somebody's saying that I don't have anybody listening to my content, they are lying to themselves.
Sure.
You just have to go out there, you have to put the content out and you get that information out there. And if you just want to be a consumer and watch TV and complain about this stuff, well, that's not going to work.
I'm not going to listen to your content.
Exactly, you're not, because you're complaining. And then you mentioned about you get in a phone call and talk to people who are going through similar struggles.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful, because essentially you're kind of getting feedback, or you're getting the sense that other people are going through the same thing that you're going through.
Sure.
And that's why they have those Alcoholics Anonymous conferences, and why they work so well is because people going through the same stuff, they come here, they share that information, and they feel better, because now they've got it off their chest, they've gotten it out in the world, and they get feedback, and people are supportive in that manner. So and I think human beings in general are we love to collaborate in that sense.
Sure. Yeah. And just think about I think, and me and you are LinkedIn junkies, so we've seen it in terms of the, you get that message where buy my stuff. Like, I'm sorry, who are you again? Type of thing.
Why should I buy your stuff?
And I think the same thing, like, let's be honest, we're all in the business. We're all trying to sell something.
We are.
But, I think what we suck at, what we don't teach people is first, there's the awareness side where people know who you are and what you sell. And then you complete that circle with the trust.
Yeah.
Trust is completely gone. Because
it is so gone.
Because I'm glad you mentioned LinkedIn Local, because we are the Louisville and Lexington, Kentucky hosts as well too down here.
Nice.
And what we changed with that is it's a little bit different, because for that networking, it's beyond just giving you your business card.
Yes,
we actually want to cultivate a conversation where I get to know that, Junaid, you have 3 kids and you have a wife, and you did travel a lot, and then and then I always come back to, what is it again you sell? Oh, well, I don't need your services, but I know somebody who may.
Exactly.
So let me give you that referral thing, because now I trust giving that referral back on the outside.
Right, because there's a human being behind here.
Yeah, we do business with humans, man, not with products or services. And LinkedIn Local and what podcasting can do. Podcasting can do that. If done correctly, right? Because people will find out who you are. We live in a social media world where your Instagram page and your LinkedIn page is more important than your resume.
It is.
People will find you.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, wow, okay, this is what you do. So.
And I ran into this video, 5149. Gary Vee, right? He says, give out 51% and take only 49. As soon as you change that ratio, it's gonna drop.
Sure,
you're not gonna get that same reciprocity. And I was like, wow, that is, and I was like, this is so amazing. I never thought of it that way. And this guy, I don't know how. He is a genius from a totally different level. He's like street genius, right? There's geniuses in school, and then this guy just, because he's done it, right? He's walked the path, and now he's telling you how to do it.
Sure, yeah.
Or he says, don't listen to what I say, do as what I do.
Sure, yeah. And definitely, I think, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but when you have conversations with like-minded people, like I'm having with you, gosh, I get a lot of energy.
It is, right? And you're totally
pumped, for 6 hours after this. I'll probably be going to do a big workout and then coming back, getting some more work done, doing all that stuff. But people want that sort of enthusiasm and energy, but then they surround themselves with negativity all the time, whether that's social media or TV or radio. Well, cut that out, I'd rather talk with you, Junaid, than watch TV, to be honest with you, so.
Exactly. Because it drains you out. And one of so I love watching TV as well, right? But I focus on comedy. I'll only focus on stuff that makes me laugh or is funny. I'll seldom watch dramas, because anytime there's suspense and there's drama, it just drains that energy, because essentially you're dealing with other people's negativity against other people.
Sure, yeah.
Like I said, it just drains you out.
Yeah. And I could add another element to that, because in this sort of grind and hustle culture, right? Like always
Mm-hmm.
work, always work, always work, always work. And I can tell from you, you know,
Yeah.
you're kind of a person like I am where this is always going up here.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Never stops.
I always have ideas. I was just like, I got to get going. But
Yeah,
when you sit down and you just have comedy, it's okay to shut it down for a little bit.
it is.
It's really okay and kind of
Yeah.
relax and figure out the next steps and spend time with your family. Like
Hmm.
it's okay. You can still hustle and like actually
Exactly.
have a personal life too. It's okay.
Yeah. And that comes to again, Gary Vee. He says, in my 20s, people were having parties, but I was just working. He was just working. And it's like I should have gone to Vegas and, relaxed a little bit
Hmm.
too. And so, that again validates that, sure, you got stuff going up in your head, but you do need to take a break. You need to relax because and you got to have that cycle. You can't be up here all the friggin' time
Right.
because it can't be day all the time. Go talk to people in Alaska where there's day 6 months, so 6 months a year. They're not happy.
Right.
You can't stay up there. You got to come down, and that's why we see these cycles in our life. We see cycles throughout nature. There's day and there's night every single day. That should snap and tell us, okay, you got to have the ups with the downs, and you got to reflect. And I was talking to another guy. It's like, days are for creating and nights are for reflecting.
Yes.
So if you're not doing that reflection and creation balance, then you're gonna feel that you're gonna crash.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And Keller and I talk a lot about sort of our philosophy. I guess you can kind of call it the not average philosophy, but
Yeah.
we've been working on this for about like 5 years and just throwing, what do they call it? Throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what
Yeah.
sticks. But,
Yeah.
we came up with this whole idea of self-awareness, purpose, and vitality. Where, first, do you kind of know who you are? Do you kind
Yeah.
of know, do you know why you're doing it? And do you have kind of the health and fitness to keep up it,
Yeah.
And, I think you hit it on the head with the self-awareness part. You have to
Hmm.
reflect,
Yeah.
who are you type of person, and you got to have to figure that out. So
Exactly.
there's steps to figure all this part out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's a journey, man. I mean, you're
It
never
is.
gonna, it's always gonna change, right? Don't expect it to
Absolutely.
be constant, but the
Yeah.
more you kind of
Change is the only constant, right?
100%, yeah. Because I think you got to know if I asked myself 10 years ago what I would be doing right now,
Yeah.
I would have said you're a liar because I'm a completely different person.
Absolutely.
And I always feel weird kind of talking about my past. Not that I'm afraid to, but it's just because it's not who I am anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's really relevant, but some people might connect with it. So sometimes I do share that story because then
Sure.
they're like, yeah, I like that. And then focus on the next month, 10 months, that you're actually going to be able to content and start that out.
Yeah. Having that history of making decisions and being and coming to where you are today, right? Because if you hadn't gone that route at all, maybe you'd be in a totally different place.
Mm.
So it's those things that we do in our life that help us become the person who we are. And funny thing is, that is somewhere where AI is at, right? Artificial intelligence is at that point. It doesn't have that experience, that the human experience, right? So we grow up and we learn through our peers, we learn through our parents, we learn through this mentorship. And when they say, AI and machine learning go hand in hand. So without machine learning, you cannot have the artificial intelligence. So you have to teach it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's crazy how people are now realizing. There's a talk I was listening to. It was actually Joe Rogan talking to Elon Musk, and they were talking about where's AI going to be in the next few years, and it's like, yeah, there are huge AI networks right now in work that we are feeding information to.
Sure.
Google, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're teaching the system what we like and what we don't like. And so when they talk about these algorithms, those are the AI brains that are
Right.
learning from us, right?
Right. Man, 100%, man. I have to say, this is the best like beekeeping podcast I've ever been on. Like we haven't talked about bees at all.
Well, so that's why I call it hacks and hobbies, right? So I started with bees because it's a new hobby that I got into. Last year I was just doing biking. So I did like 1,500 miles of biking.
Sure, yeah.
And so I'm talking about these hobbies and these life hacks in this podcast. So it goes with bees. And as human beings, our interests change. Just like you said, if somebody told you where you're going to be 10 years from now, and you'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So just like that, our hobbies change because our interests change, and, the things we like change over time. And I figured, just like you got to have that downtime and do the reflection, and hobbies help you during that, do that reflection, because you might be building something with wood, but your mind is somewhere else solving different problems.
Yes.
There was a TED talk, or basically a small excerpt from his TED talk talking about boredom. Like, we are so afraid of being bored. And because we're afraid of being bored, we're not able to let our mind think and contemplate and reflect, because we go from one thing to the other. Like, okay, attention. Like, our attention is dropping, and it's because of this, because we don't want to be bored. So she said, it's okay to be bored sometimes, because that's when your brain goes into full speed and solves those problems for you.
Sure, yeah. It's just a different problem that the 21st century kids have to deal with, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What the heck did you do in the 1800s?
Yeah.
There was no TV. There was no radio. All you had was books, right? And then just time to yourself as you figure it out. So yeah, I think we're definitely missing out in terms of being super reflective. I think that's really important to growth.
It is, yeah.
Because partially, in my mind, why starting a podcast too is because I wasn't a talker. I was one of those guys in high school and college that got up for a presentation and I thought I was going to die, because you put yourself and you got to be super vulnerable, and how do I sound, and am I going to mess up type of thing, and, for me, feeling uncomfortable was part of the growth thing.
Yeah.
So the podcast initially made me feel uncomfortable, and it made me get out of my shell a little bit to actually, do stuff, because I had big goals over the next 5-10 years, and this is just all part of the process,
Yeah.
A podcast can be a little bit more than just the podcast.
It could be
a personal development tool for you for the future.
Exactly.
Putting it up that way. So.
No, it's so true. And now you're doing it daily.
We release 3 times a week.
Okay.
Mostly we're just interview format currently right now, but we do a lot of the one-on-one stuff. We got a ton in the queue right now that we just haven't released yet, just because we've been bogged down with the interviews. So now we're at least way ahead. We batched quite a few that were good for the rest of the year. We just need to edit it and release it type of thing. So it's not actually getting the content down on paper. How can you adjust the content to, get your message out to more people? That's the stage we're on with our podcast. And then hopefully in the new year, start season 2 and have a different format as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, you talk about how we haven't talked about bees on the Bee podcast. Right. And so it's beekeeping, and then, other hobbies that I got into. And then I almost got to a point where I'm talking enough to myself that I'm like, I want to see other people's struggles and what are their life hacks. And since life is a combination of hobbies and living life, and personal and professional, I figured, might as well, get some more. And you could say that it's sort of like my own personal development that you could see through the podcast. So it's funny. And, I've learned, I've joined several communities. I joined the Anchor community, where all the podcasters are hanging out here. They're either talking about their podcast, and, they're helping other people figure out what equipment, what settings, and, helping other people figure out, how to do the podcast good, and, what kind of setup. There's a lot of noise in my audio. What do I do? Or what software are you using? I'm trying to talk to 3 people. How can I record? And so there's a lot of good stuff, and I got to talk to a couple of people on there as well. In fact, I think I have one, and we're going to be talking about parenting, because
Oh, cool.
3 of us, we're all parents, and his name is Graham. He's been podcasting for 8+ years.
Ooh.
And I was like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
How'd you get into it? And he's like, well, growing up, I didn't know too much about my parents, or my dad was always working, and, didn't know too much about my grandparents, where they come from, and, the lineage and the history. So I figured when my first son was born, I'll do a podcast so I can start talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And he can, go back and like, oh, this is my dad. He, he talked to all these people. I think last year he did a parenting podcast. Now, this guy is a beast mode. Since he is a coach, a personal coach as well, he talks to a lot of people, and he's creating like 4.5 hours of content every day.
Jesus.
I'm like, wow, dude.
Wow.
That's insane. It's like,
if it works for him, that's intense.
It works for him because he's able to do, that's his main job, talking to people. So when he's talking to people, he's recording those conversations, and then he's putting them out there in the specific area. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And so that's one of the reasons I started talking to people, and, bringing those parallels into beekeeping as well. Like, and, how a queen bee, and, we talk about leadership, and you got to be, they're talking about servant leadership, and that's something new coming on, right? Like,
Sure.
A queen bee is essentially a servant leader, because even though a queen bee lives for 2 to 5 years, the worker bees are the ones that are feeding the queen bee, who only live for 6 weeks. It's so amazing. Like, these bees are going to be gone for 6 weeks, but the queen bee is dependent on these little guys to bring in the food, to tend to the eggs that she's laid, to tend to the larva, right? So so we see those parallels in leadership and these days. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a hell of a, I guess, metaphor or analogy, whatever you call it. I was never an English major. I don't
yeah.
it up that way. No, 100% with that one, Junaid, man. I mean, it's about building up your community, right? And Peter and I talk a lot about, like, we've had different paths professionally, where it was I was grocery retail and then small business, and he did aeronautics sales and marketing.
Wow.
But and you come together and we talk about these things, it was almost the exact same issues that were happening.
It is.
It didn't matter what industry you were actually in, and building it that way. And, we like to think we're so different, right?
We're so not different.
There's so many, like, similarities that we can actually point to if we actually open up the communication lines.
Exactly.
And just have some real discussions with real people.
Yep. It's very amazing. And you got to take the ups and the downs, because if you don't, it's a flat line and you're dead.
Yep. You got it, man. Very cool.
Right.
100%.
I don't know how much more time you have, but when I'm talking to people, like-minded people, we could just go on for hours, because there's so much good stuff we can learn from each other, that we learn from each other. And I really like your idea of, having a mastermind group conference call. And, just talk, okay, this is what I'm going through, how did you solve this problem? And there's actually a business model around it. There's a CEO, there's this group of professionals where these CEOs get together and they talk about stuff. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Sure, you pay a monthly subscription fee to be part of this, this meeting, conferences and whatnot, but
you would pay it, because it would probably get some great stuff out of it. So.
Absolutely.
So we're actually on the role of trying to start up something like that too, because
nice.
To me, I just like to connect with, like you said, people like you, Junaid, and building your community out that way.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting way, but let's get a little bit honest. Let's be a little bit more authentic and like how we reach out to people. So
yeah, absolutely.
But Junaid, you have a hell of a podcast, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great talking to you.
Hey, let's do this again, and obviously we got to get you on our podcast too.
Let's get that scheduled up, and then whatever you have time available.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. All right, see you, Junaid.
See ya.